Political assassinations. It's topical, and it starts right now. A very good evening to you, South Africa, those watching around the world. My name is Blaine Herman, and this is It's Topical, our digital audience with us tonight. It's good to see them, among them our guests. We're looking forward to getting their questions and comments for our guests in a short while. Political hits. According to SABC News research, in 2022, at least 20 cases of political killings were recorded in the country involving leaders at a local government level. Police Minister Bheki says law enforcement agencies are dealing with these violent attacks. Since July 2018, a task team has so far investigated over 300 dockets. Cele says of these, 134 cases were reported between 2011 and the formation of the task team, which was back in 2018. And he says the task team is investigating 155 cases of murder, 51 of attempted murder, 77 of intimidation, and 12 cases of conspiracy to commit murder. Now, here's the other problem as I throw these numbers to you, right? Some feel we as a society are getting numb to this reality, that it's just being seen as just numbers, becoming, oh, that again. A story that's buried at the bottom of the bulletin. It shouldn't be. It's a serious, sobering issue. As a society, are we forgetting that there are grieving wives, husbands, mothers, fathers, children behind these numbers? Politicians being killed, a stain on political life in this country. And we can't pretend that there's no civic harm, right? It creates insecurity. There's a climate of fear and uncertainty. Elections coming up next year, our anchor of democracy. However, if you have good, honest people too fearful to run for office because there's a perception or real threat out there that job can get you killed, then it has a real potential of dividing society and threatening democracy itself. Which leads us to the question of the week, and we're asking you, what drives political killings in South Africa, and what's the lasting solution? The latter, important, extremely. We will get some answers for you. So, in 2016, following a slew of assassinations of political party leaders and members, the KwaZulu-Natal government established the Moerane Commission to probe the underlying causes of attacks on politicians in the province. Now, 7 years later, and there appears to be no end in sight to the onslaught on politicians in the province. According to the Inter-Ministerial Committee, 52 councillors and 103 officials in political offices have been murdered in the province since 2011. Now, the South African Local Government Association reported that 17 were gunned down in a space of 10 months. So just how many of the Commission's recommendations have been implemented? Ayanda Mncwango has more on the story. All right, we're having a bit of an issue with that package. We'll come back to it in a short while. Basically talks about the current state of play, right? And how we got here. Interesting, the Moerane Commission, the recommendations. What did it contain, and how much of the recommendations have been implemented so far? What sort of recommendations were there, and how practical is it? Take a look.
Almost 30 years into democracy, and KwaZulu-Natal, once considered a hotbed of political violence, continues to struggle to shed its violent past. Ethnic conflicts and political rivalry were amongst the root causes of the deadly violence that claimed thousands of lives and displaced many more in the 80s and 90s. Fast forward to recent years, and the violence appears to have taken a different form. Targeted hits on people in political leadership positions at local government level. The period between 2011 and 2016, described as the worst post-democracy, saw political assassinations continue unabated. Pressure was mounting on government to act. Most of those killed were leaders of the ANC. In October 2016, the then KZN Premier Mncwango established the Moerane Commission to investigate the causes of the attacks. And 2 years later, as the body count rose higher, the Justice and Security Cluster, at the behest of President Cyril Ramaphosa, set up a task team to investigate political killings. The historical imprints of its brutal past are still present, despite efforts to the contrary. Political leaders in the province, who often don't see eye to eye, agree on the causal factors.
I think in local government, what we should also face as a reality, as political parties per se, not a ruling party, because it's a South African phenomenon, which gives rise to these matters of councillors, is greed and corruption.
When councillors are honest and they expose corruption, they're at risk for those corrupt individuals.
People who believe that when you become a councillor, you will have power to have access to tenders, to have control over important decisions.
Some of these political killings, when you try to get also the root cause, it is clearly not on the policy and ideological differences from various political parties, but it's solely on the people who wish to have access to resources for narrow selfish enrichment, manipulating the procurement processes in a quest for tenders.
The Moerane Commission found, amongst other things, that the barriers of entry to becoming a councillor are extremely low, and that political positions of councillors create opportunities for access to resources that can lead to corruption. It also found that the lack of political leadership and the manipulation by leaders in their lower structures were contributing factors to the murder of politicians. The Commission made its recommendations, which, if implemented, could assist political parties and law enforcement to bring an end to killings. Opposition parties are of the view that the Commission, which was estimated to cost around 15 million rand, was nothing but a waste of money and time.
And very little has actually happened, and very few, in fact, none of those recommendations have been implemented. So we appeal to every single political party. Let's sit round a table, let's analyze what the situation is, let's look at solutions moving forward. Let's consider the Moerane Commission.
The ongoing attacks are threatening stability in the province and the delivery of much-needed services, especially in already disadvantaged communities. Afraid for their lives, many councillors have gone into hiding, thus unable to fully perform their duties. A growing number of councillors are under protection, costing municipalities millions of rands.
Every meeting that we convene as the EFF, surely there will be a report of certain people or certain public reps of the EFF who get death threats for doing their work that have been appointed or been deployed to do.
The entry requirement for councillors and the low literacy levels are also being debated. A skills audit revealed that at least 300 councillors in KZN could not read or write.
I think there must be an amendment in the Structures Act that put the requirements of who should be a councillor for all political parties, so that we know these are the attributes of somebody to be a councillor. Beyond this thing of saying you must be a person of sound mind and all that, that is minimal to me. It must be a clear requirement of who should be a councillor.
Political parties need to educate their members. That is the first thing. So that they will understand the issue of democracy and competition whenever a leader has to be elected in a community. That's point number one. So that even the intra killings which take place will not take place when people will have an understanding what it calls to become a councillor. Well, the issue of the entry level as to what in fact are the requirements in order to become a councillor may be also a factor that might assist to mitigate the current challenges which are facing the KwaZulu-Natal when it comes to political killings.
It seems that it's up to political parties to ditch the lip service and stick to their commitments to see a decline in their attacks on their own. I am Mncwango, SABC News, Durban.
All right, many thanks to Ayanda Mncwango. Let's walk and talk. Ayanda's insert kicks up a lot of interesting issues. In particular, what's the root cause, right? That's the obvious. But what's the lasting solutions here? Are politically motivated killings, what part do they play in terms of targeted killings in KwaZulu-Natal, around the country as well? We will discuss. But first, let's get you some context. And as always, we turn to the magic wall. And my guest tonight is Maswili Ralebona, a specialist researcher at SABC News. Good to have your better mind on the program, sir.
Thank you.
This number, 153 plus minus between January 2010 and September 2023. Now, what's the data telling us in terms of killings prior to an election?
So thank you, Blaine. The data, Blaine, shows a tense situation, a tense period leading to elections, especially the local government elections. You'll remember that 6 months, the period between elections, 6 months before the elections, that's where political parties are supposed to be submitting their candidate lists, and all role players, party players, main players in different political parties are involved. That's where Maswili, who will be contesting who thinks he will be in that list to contest the elections in Mhlaba Lingana or wherever, would be expecting his name to be in that list. But when the party doesn't favor him, it turns out negative for him and those who are supporting him. You'll remember that when you contest the local government elections, you are not only, what we see is that we are not only contesting against the candidate of the opposition party, but you are also contesting the your comrades within your party, and that's where it turns out as murders and other threats that political parties are facing.
Intra-party issues rather than political or policy or ideological differences. Is that the case?
It's about bread and butter situation, and they want to, before they go and contest each other outside, contest the opposition, they contest each other inside the party.
Right. So this is a sharp focus on KwaZulu-Natal, but within a space of a year, and you can see 17 assassinations as opposed to the other issues.
Yes.
Why KwaZulu-Natal? Why a particular focus on this province?
So, Blaine, you'll remember that KZN has been an epicenter of political killings since the dawn of democracy. And recently, the results of the local government 2021 gave us 70 hung municipalities, of which 21 of them are in KZN. What does that mean? It means now the contest in those hung municipalities is no longer within the intra-party that we spoke about earlier. It's ANC, it's EFF, it's NFP, it's IFP in KZN in 21 municipalities, still squabbling to control the public purse in those municipalities. I will give an example right now. The mayor, the deputy mayor of eThekwini, that was elected in 2021 just after the elections, is now the mayor in Mvubu. That tells you the kind of situation that the coalition governments brought into our municipalities, and the uncertainty, the uncertainty of the future in these politicians. I think that's one of the issues that is turning KZN into a battlefield and turning into murders.
Speaking about battlefield, and it's not only in KwaZulu-Natal, as you can see. These are some of the politicians just this year alone who are killed. And you saw Mpumalanga, Western Cape, Limpopo, etc., etc. Talk to us about the national spread in terms of these killings, and if researchers picked up any, link or thread running through these murders, in terms of possible motive? What are we learning?
In KZN, Blaine, everybody is talking about councillors being under siege, whereas in other provinces, I'll give you an example of Limpopo. The mayor of Collins Shabani municipality was murdered last year. I think it was in July, and those who are closer to the situation are saying the mayor, since his municipality was the only one that was receiving clean audits in the entire Limpopo province, they allege that he was murdered for his tight behavior to the public purse. In the Western Cape, recently, we had 3 EFF activists who were murdered allegedly for organizing a meeting, and in the community meeting, in that meeting, they agreed, a decision was taken that they are going to destroy and raid the house of an alleged drug dealer, and after that, they were killed before they can do what they alleged to have been going to do. So it's not the same as in KZN. Throughout the country, we see a different trend. We see a different approach to these political killings.
Let's have a look at some of the findings from the Moerane Commission of Inquiry. Started back in 2016.
Yes.
Findings and recommendations. Now, on the face of it, the findings and recommendations, it makes sense, right? But many are arguing that it needs to have practical expression, which means implementation.
Yes.
To what extent has these recommendations been implemented?
So one of the recommendations was that the depoliticization of the police service,
Yes.
SAPS, and the depoliticization of the tender system. You know, and so far we know nothing has changed on that front. And one of the recommendations again was that political parties must put their councillors or their comrades into some political education platforms where they will understand and practice some healthy political competition rather than killing each other.
And understanding democratic principles, right?
Yes. So far, we do see there and there political parties talking about political education in their parties, but the ground in KZN in particular has not changed. The situation is getting worse and worse by the day.
All right, Maswede, thank you very much indeed for your time. Context always important as we discuss this further. Maswede Ralebona, a specialist researcher here at the SABC. All right, on our regular Word on the Street feature, we took to the streets of Johannesburg seeking a diverse views, insights, perspectives on this topic. And this is what people had to say. Take a look.
People in positions of political power are trying to usurp each other through this very unfortunate way of taking each other, each other's lives, instead of doing what we need from political leaders, which is stepping up, speaking up, rallying behind the people, behind the problems, and getting these positions the right way.
Politics, the people are supposed to look after the people. So have they become so power hungry that they are start to eliminate one another, which is really, really scary.
This thing has been going on for too long, Like, what I can say is that with political killings, it's like people are playing chess just to benefit somewhere else.
It's going to start quieting people. Less people do want to get into politics. I know that when we were at school, more and more people wanted to be part of politics. Now it's almost 15 years later or 10 years later, and I don't know a single person that wants to be part of politics anymore. It's discouraging.
I strongly feel it's because of the corruption that politicians are into in this country. They are not mainly focusing on the bigger picture, which is growing this country, growing the economy. They're just focusing on themselves. That's why it ends up in them killing each other. I
think it's a real shame that people who are in power are actually subjected to this type of threats all the time. It shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen in any democracy, any place in the world, and it shows that there's a disrespect for the democratic system and a disrespect for the people who hold office, public office in this country.
Loss of life in any sphere is always unfortunate, And now my greatest concern about that is there are, possibly lots of people that actually want to come into the political space to do good, to do right, to serve the people. And then when they see how volatile and the amount of danger that can come into play, like political assassinations and everything else, we are losing out on potential, leaders that could come into the fray and actually do good in the country.
All right, we really appreciate your thoughts on this matter. Let's get straight to it. We've got a number of guests, also our digital audience as well. We need to get to them in the short space of time. Lots to discuss, lots of answers needed. To help me unpack this issue, we're joined on Teams by ANC Secretary in KwaZulu-Natal, Bheki Mtolo. We also have the DA leader in KwaZulu-Natal, Francois Rodger, as well as Albert Mncwango, IFP Deputy Secretary General, and the eThekwini EFF Regional Chairperson Themba Mvubu. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your time. Also, our digital audience with us tonight. They're going to throw in some questions, so please stand by for that. Mr. Mtolo, factors leading to the killing of politicians, in particular in KwaZulu-Natal. What has your party found out in terms of causes? Oops, did we lose Mr. Mtolo?
I'm back now.
All right, go ahead.
No, thanks very much. Greetings to you and your viewers. I think there are various reasons. Not all of them are linked to either corruption or political violence. There are various, depending on case-by-case basis, based on the balance of evidence. But what you can say, I think I've mentioned this for the longest time, especially as a person who has been in local government for almost at the political level almost more than 10 years. Now it's that what has happened is that those who find the space to infiltrate political parties and become councillors, and then with no intention to serve the community, but with a sole intention to enrich themselves. When within the space of that particular local municipality or district, they find honest, hard-working individuals who wants to serve the community, want to spend every cent to develop the community, and they see those people as obstacles, then they see them as a threat, and the only option that they can do is to try to eliminate them.
But this is surely known for a long time now, and it's not only endemic in South Africa. It's a pandemic around the world with regards to politics, right? You saw what the recommendations were from the Moerane Commission, but what has been implemented to weed out this scourge?
Yeah, for example, the recommendation that you have mentioned, if I can say, I don't want to make this, I will try to not make this an ANC interview, because it will lose its credibility. But from our part, we've established a political school, or Themba political school. We've also, in fact, there was an allegation that the recommendation that there must be no political interference on tenders has not been implemented. That's not true. If you look at the FMMA that came into effect in 2004, politicians are prohibited by law to involve themselves on tenders. If they do that, they do that at their own intention illegal. They know that they are doing something illegal. But remember, these things, you can put these measures. These measures are not going to change someone who has joined political party B, A, or D with the sole intention to use that political party to get into government and steal money.
Yeah. Look, let me bring in Francois Rodger here. And I wondered the risk. How big of a risk is it, Francois, to be an honest politician, to expose corruption if you see it in this day and age?
Good evening, Blaine, and good evening to your viewers and to the colleagues on the platform. Blaine, I think you've hit the nail on the head. You know, an honest and true and direct politician should be one that's there for the people and not for any personal cause. And I think very often we lose sight of that. It's a calling, and people tend to just take it up as a position, and then you find yourself in the situation that we're in. And therefore, I think it's critically important that when people fill positions of office, there should be some form of screening process, some form of interview process to, in fact, mitigate what the Moerane Commission found. And that was that many of our councillors are in a position, but they don't necessarily have the capacity and the understanding of local government, and perhaps the ethical ability to be able to perform their job. And I think that in itself is critical. So perhaps one of the solutions going forward is, as per the Moerane Commission, is that there needs to be more insightful screening and the election process. Well, that's obviously internal, party internal, a process of electing fit-for-purpose leaders to be able to perform their duties.
You bring up an important point with regards to what the Moerane Commission picked up in terms of the barriers of entry to become a councillor, saying that it's extremely low. I was listening to Ayenda Mhlongo's reporting now, saying a skills audit revealed that at least 300 councillors in KZN could not read or write. Albert Mncwango, if you could hear us, to what extent does this contribute to the misunderstanding of democratic principles? I'm not sure if you have Albert. Albert, can you hear us? All right, while we try Albert, maybe let me throw that question to you, Themba, with regards to this issue of skills shortage or a lack thereof among councillors, and what the Moerane Commission picked up in terms of the barriers of entry to becoming a councillor. To what extent does that contribute to the misunderstanding of democratic principles and how to handle competition within a province?
No, thank you very much, Blaine. Good evening to you, and good evening to the viewers at home. Look, it's common purpose. If a person happens to occupy a position that they themselves, they feel that they shouldn't be occupying that position because of the lack of skills that is required, the leadership skill thereof, they are going to be so insecure to a point where they will resort to all desperate measures to try and hold on to this position, because, as you know, this position that you're speaking about, they comes with certain access to resources. So people will do everything in their power to try and preserve that. So that is why then you see all of these killings that get to take place, because people some of them, they know that they are not worthy of the position that they hold, but because it has then exposed them to particular lifestyles and resources, so they will then resort to all manner of things, even like different measures where they tend to resort to killing. But I don't want to limit our discussion to say that killing only happen in politics. Generally, South Africa is a crime-ridden country. If one can put it bluntly. If you look at the statistics about conduct crime, then we'll get to come to appreciate that we have a serious problem of crime in this country. But the sense of it, Blaine and the colleagues, I will argue that if you are not going to deal with the issue of inequality, if you are not going to deal with the issue of poverty, every remedy that you are going to try and prescribe, I doubt that it will yield the desired results.
All right.
Thank you.
Let's try Albert Mncwango again. So if you can hear me, this belief, and something that Themba touched on, the belief that when you become a councillor, you have access to resources, you have certain influence, you can influence certain decisions. Is this a reality on the ground?
Yeah, good evening, sir, and the fellow participants. Yes, indeed, it is a reality on the ground. One person who has actually just commented a short while ago mentioned an important point, that of unemployment and poverty. There are people out there who are unemployed, and the issue of being a councillor has actually become an area where one can actually get employment for at least 5 years, and that in itself actually has.
Oh dear, did we lose Mr. Mncwango? All right, we do apologize for that. Let me maybe bring in Mr. Mtolo. We were talking about the triple threat, right? Unemployment, inequality, poverty. These are problems that can't be fixed overnight. We have a certain guideline in terms of the Moerane Commission, in terms of the recommendations, right, in order to fix this. One of the examples, right, I'll just read something, is that it recommends that political parties urgently educate their members about democratic practices. Political parties must discipline their members who conduct or encourage political intolerance and violence. Is this happening?
Yes, of course, there are no political party that will openly encourage its members to be violent, especially on intra-party phenomenon. But what is important here is that also I think we may end up creating an impression that uneducated people or people with a low level of literacy or people who are poor are the ones who are a problem, which is necessarily based on evidence, not true. Most poor people are just vulnerable. They can't hire a hitman to kill anyone. People who are killing people are people at least who are resourced and whose intention that they are there not for they are holding political office or public offices for wrong reasons. What is important, I think, which I can agree, you know that we have tried to do a massive vigorous interviewing of councillors, community meetings, involvement. But even then, in those processes, in some instances, these thugs, they still, some of them, escape and become councillors. I would make an example. In my ward where I stayed, in 2021, the ANC almost lost 700 votes because it removed someone who bought a matric certificate. And then it said, can't fit someone who bought a matric certificate. If you got a councillor who buys a matric certificate, then you continue with that person. You are implying to the youth that they can buy a matric certificate. But unfortunately, the voters nearly punished the ANC for that decision. But also, I'm trying to say, even society also, I think we must go beyond political parties. I think as political parties, all of us, and as government, we must try to educate society about issues of wrong people holding political offices, wrong people, just holding any influence in society. For example, we say that police now, they will kill a well-known thug, a well-known criminal. But we'll find that police are being bashed in the social media, on Twitter, everywhere. They are being undermined. And people are literally openly celebrating a thug. What kind of a society is this?
Let's speak to members of society. Asanda, let's get your take on what you think are the root causes of the killing of politicians in South Africa. If you can unmute. Asanda.
Greetings. I think the reason behind the killings of politicians is because of access to resources and positions.
Right, go ahead.
Am I being fast? Serious?
All right, Asanda, we'll try to fix your connection. Akona, go ahead.
Mr.
Akona.
Blaine, if I might interject.
Go on.
Yeah, I think when we are examining what motivates such agendas, I think we should take into consideration the different or combination of factors that contribute largely into the escalation of this event. I think we should acknowledge factors such as political competition and power struggles within organizations. But I dwell a bit on power struggles that comes with both internal and external competition, political competition, of which I think it has been the central contributing factor that we don't want to talk about or we tend to shy away from.
But, you know, the point is, and it's well established that power struggles happen everywhere in the world, right? The point is, or the task at hand is, how do we get rid of that? Or, look, competition is fine, but how do we make it healthy competition where you don't see people getting killed? I think that's the point. What do you think?
I think when it comes to that, political organizations and as well as law enforcement agencies have a role to play where they create a platform where now they engage, I think, these affected parties in a dialogue towards resolving or curbing such events.
Yeah. Francois, the root of political killings, in terms of how does policy and ideological differences stack up in terms of motive for these killings with those who solely, wish to access resource for self-enrichment? What has your party found?
Blaine, I think, the one thing we need to do as leaders of political parties is we need to step up here. We can't say that it's a problem that we shouldn't be solving. And I think, again, that comes back to what I said earlier, and that's making sure that the people that you appoint are there for the right reason. And there's got to be some form of screening process. But Blaine, that leads me on to something else, and that's something that I don't believe was touched on in the Moerane Commission. And that's if we got this endemic culture of killing councillors, why are we not considering reviewing legislation about vacancies that are created under mysterious circumstances? That in itself would be an immediate deterrent, because if you go through the Moerane Commission, a lot of it is internal politics and it's political struggles within organizations to gain power.
Just break that down for me, Francois, in terms of reviewing legislation. Just give me an example.
All right. So, for example, if a ward councillor is killed, we straight away have a by-election. And very often the killing of a ward councillor is for political reasons, whether it's inter-party or external parties. And perhaps it's time that we step up and say, well, let's review the legislation. That if people are going to be killed, that in fact we've got to review the legislation, and that a PR councillor, perhaps as a suggestion, that's next on that party list, takes over that ward councillor's position. That in itself is, to me, a deterrent that we should be exploring.
Themba, are you in favour of that, reviewing legislation?
Yes, good evening again. Look, I choose to have a different perspective when it comes to the violence that we get to experience as the people. I think what was not such as even in the commission of Moerane was the fact that how did we become so violent as the people? You must remember the history of this country where we come from. That's black people in particular were actually dehumanized to a point where their life was worth nothing, basically. They were treated like animals. So what does that phenomenon lead to? There is no respect for human life. There is absolutely no regard for human life because of this conditioning. And this was done purposefully. We must not be historical about these things.
It's seemingly the historical imprints of South Africa's brutal past is still present, right? Despite efforts to the contrary. Correct. But in terms of possible solutions and what Francois raised, I want to get your take. Would your party be in favor of, say, for instance, if a ward councillor is killed, then the next line in terms of the PR councillor takes over that position? Do you think there needs to be that review of legislation? What do you think?
I don't think this will be a democratic practice. I really don't think this will be a democratic exercise to do such, because obviously the community must be given an opportunity to elect a public representative of their choice. So now if then we are going to implement then will mean that you are imposing a particular person upon the particular society. Let's deal with criminality as is. If there are people that are conducting criminal activities, let them be dealt with in such fashion. But to then come back because it's not all political parties that get to be subjected or get to have criminals occupying certain positions. Some political parties are very clear on who qualifies to be on their list as the public rep, who then gets to be qualified to participate in elections. So if certain parties, they've got serious issues of this intra-political killing, they must be able to deal with this, because I can tell you for free where I come from in the EFF. If there is any element, whether it's criminal or misconduct, the organization deals with it immediately.
Albert Mncwango, in terms of lasting solutions and a deterrent in terms of political killings, what did we lose Mr. Mncwango? All right, we lost Mr. Mncwango. Maybe it's a good time now to take a quick break. When we come back, we need to hear from you at It's Topical SABC. Lasting solutions, that's the big thing here, right? We know about the historical imprints of the past and what we're currently dealing with in terms of political killings, in particular in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Why is KwaZulu-Natal different? We will discuss that later. Gunning for power, it says it all, isn't it? I said at the top, in terms of if there's a perception or a real threat that a person who takes up a job, runs for office, and they might be killed, it's going to deter them. You're going to deter good, honest people from running for office. That directly affects democracy. Let's take it to the digital audience and find out what they have to say with regards to this. Possible solutions. This is what we're after in terms of how to get to a better place. Let's speak to Hazel. Hazel, let's hear your views. If you can unmute. Do we have Hazel? Okay, I think we're battling with Hazel. Andiswa. Let's hear from you, Andiswa.
Greetings.
Go ahead, Andisa. Let's try it.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you, Andisa. Ooh, the gremlins are in the system tonight. let's try one more time, Andisa.
Hello.
All right, let's go to Lisa. Lisa, if you can hear me, if you can unmute. No, Lisa's not there. Sandile. Let's try.
Yes, I can hear you.
There we go. Third time's the charm. Go on.
Okay. If we are trying to look at the solutions, I don't think there is something like a quick fix solution that can work on this. Because if you look at the history, the context, the economy, and everything in South Africa, we seem like to have a problem that we never really addressed in the first place. It's like when we started these democratic processes into democracy, we have the homelands, and the homelands were deprived differently from each other. So now, if you look at what the dynamics that have been there in KZN, you realize that the homeland of KwaZulu used to have these sort of like a cloud of violence, if I may put it that way. So we have this history of violence. Now, at the end of the process, like all of a sudden we create these 9 provinces, then we incorporate the homelands and everything into it. Then we begin to have a problem. If you look at it on the other hand, it's like South Africa, we are divided. Let me put it like we are divided into 3. There is a core whereby these better off people live, which are core spaces. Then there is a middle class, whereby you get some sort of affluent people where they live. And then we have these peripheral spaces where there are people who are now struggling. So if you look at it from that perspective, you realize that the problem with these political assassinations and most of the violence, it comes from the peripheries. That's where you can locate it. So now the question is, how do we minimize the peripheries while increasing the core? That's the main question that I think will address this. It's not something that you can do it overnight. It's a long-term investment. We have to deal with deprivation of people, of the majority of people. We have to minimize inequality, and we have to minimize unemployment. Because if you look at it, most of the people who face these assassinations, some of them is like they come from these peripheral spaces, and if they get to a councillor, now they're jumping to the middle class. And once you taste the life of the middle class, you don't want to go back. That's how I think some of the assassinations may be things.
Right.
So, yeah. So there are numerous factors that can be there.
Right. Let's speak to, thank you very much, Sandile. Councillor Zwelakhe Shilembe. He joins us now. And I understand that there was an attempt on his life. And according to reports, his bodyguard was shot recently. Councillor, good to have you on the program. Tell us your story and where do you see the possible solutions here?
Thank you very much to yourself as well as to my colleagues who are also part of this discussion. Let me also extend my greetings to all the viewers. With regard to this matter of the killings of politicians or councillors, I can confirm that I'm the survivor of those shootings, of which I strongly believe that the major problem is the response from the SABC, South African Policing Service, whenever there are issues or there are cases that are reported to them in connection with this matter in question. Because one, the crime intelligence unit that deals with threats against any individual who is receiving those threats, they take so much time to get into the bottom of the matter. Two, and if they come to a conclusion on the certain matter, like in my case, they came into a conclusion that I should be provided with the bodyguards, but they can only be approved for 3 months. Then the question would be, after 3 months, what will then happen to that particular person who got the report from the crime intelligence for risk assessment that clear state that there is threats in your life? How can you then justify that it will only take 3 months or 3 months period then after 3 months, what will then happen? It also speaks to the last incident that took place in Mkambatini. One of the councillors that was provided with security personnel for that particular period, then after being stripped of the bodyguard, then the councillor was attacked and shot. So to one of those problems, both with the SABC as well as with Cocteau Department, because if the municipality doesn't have a threat assessment report, they will be getting reports saying that there is a non-compliance because they are providing security personnel to councillors without a threat assessment. Those are major challenges that are out there, and that puts our lives in danger as councillors or as public servants.
The obvious question to you, I guess, is what keeps you going after this attempt on your life? Why risk it? Why stay in the game?
One, my conviction is that we are here to advocate for social change. So irrespective of the environment, the political spectrum, but at the end of the day, we are there to serve the people. We are there to be the advocates of our people. And I really appreciate also the support from the leadership of Francois Rodger, who also part of this engagement, but also the support from the municipality, because without those key people, I think for me, it wouldn't be easy to continue, because some of us who are holding positions within the municipality, and which those positions are positions that strictly deals with the oversight role on the finances of the municipality. I also believe that such a position could also has an impact on the lives of those people who are holding those positions. So, of which my view would be, the Cocteau as well as SALCA should also consider providing security for those people like who are holding impact position in municipalities, because those people are the one who are playing an oversight role on the finances of the municipality.
So
and they should
a
also
better working relationship with the various departments in order to effect change. I hear your point. Bheki Mtolo, Bheki Cele said that law enforcement agencies are dealing with these violent attacks. I mentioned about the task team since July 2018. Over 300 dockets have been investigated, 134 cases reported between 2011 and 2018. And he lists a number of cases that are being investigated. What do you think about this relationship between government, as Zwaleka mentioned, in terms of COCTA, the police? What more can be done? I mean, he mentioned this space of about 3 months in which protection is given. But then what happens afterwards? Because it's not guaranteed that this case can be solved. Do you think there needs to be a better working relationship there?
Yeah, I think we need to look at...
Mrs. Shilembe, just 1 second. That was for Bheki Mtolo.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
No, thanks. I think, there must be an improved working relationship. But we must understand that the drafters of the Constitution, they were very clever when they said, whatever that the government does, it must do those things within the availability of limited resources. What if you look at the progress of providing security to councillors? It started with mayors, it was extended to speakers. Now the new circular that I've seen that has
digital audience, are they sorted out?
It has been extended now to deputy mayors and whips. But the challenge that the local government is facing and government is facing is that with these killings as they are going, the government, we all know, the government can't. For example, the municipality I was a mayor in Oxford, we could not protect every councillor.
Yeah.
Then there are municipalities that can. If you say, for example, Italy must protect all the 200 councillors. I'm telling you, the whole budget providing a service for the councillor. Then the government also is looking at balancing the provision of that service also with key service delivery challenges. Right? I think the resources of the municipality are so limited that they would want to provide a security to each and every councillor. Unfortunately, they can't.
All right. Mr. Mtolo, thank you very much indeed. I want to try my digital audience once again. You probably heard me asking if they are ready for us. Let's try it again. I do apologize for the technical issues that we've been having. Let's try Andiswa. Andiswa, let's get your take. If you can unmute, where do you see the solution here?
Personally and honestly, I believe there might be possible solutions to the issue. As other speakers have said, it might be that the matter has increased or been overlooked. There are different contributors to the issue at hand. So for us to solve the issue, we have to look at different characters or contributors to the issue. It might be social issues, economic issues. I mean, from where I come from, there are people who are contest as councillors, not necessarily because they understand politics, right? It's only because they do not have jobs, they're unemployed, or the status at most, So now then that leads to people being in leadership without the knowledge of knowing how to lead or what happens with within the politics. So in what's happening, I believe that if we, in a way, could be taught about politics, as it like, what is politics? How politics can be conducted in a way, then there will be a decrease in the killing, and like this could be literally be seen as terrorism in a way. These are like the political killings characterize terrorism in a way. So now, in terms of...
Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but thank you very much indeed. Point taken. Thank you to all my guests as well. Look, 1 hour is never enough, right? But this discussion will continue, no doubt, and we will continue this discussion until we get to that better place, especially in the lead up to the elections. Thank you, everybody, once again. All right, before we go, here's my take. These political killings have wide-ranging consequences, so there is a need for a comprehensive response. We all need to play our part. I know. easier said than done. Sometimes it's easier to stay silent. Speaking out comes with its own challenges, but also its own rewards. So if somebody musters up the courage to stand up and speak out against corruption, then they must be listened to and protected. It's about listening to society and then acting, because often what you ignore, you empower. And that's my take. Until next week, my brothers and sisters, take care. Bye-bye.